So I was talking to some of my older friends a little while ago, and they don't comprehend the dialectics. Now, I'm going to make a video explaining dialectics because there's a lot of misconceptions about it. Even amongst modern leftists, there is this gap between using dialectical materialism and leftist ideology. You can use dialectical materialism without ascribing to a lot of the bullshit that goes on now. All this bullshit about social justice warriors is something else entirely. Now, this is not to say that there isn't a hint of truth in it. In fact, there is a lot of truth in it, and that's where the confusion comes in. For example, a lot of my older friends think that I've become a social justice warrior because, yeah, I agree with the Tumblr types about fat positive, or about transgender issues, or about homosexuality, because those are true problems. They may be problems in the first world primarily, but they are indeed problems. They are treated like shit for something that has no bearing on anything. It does not change them as people. Whether or not someone has sex with someone of their gender or someone of the opposite gender does not constitute any kind of definition of their character. It does not mean that they are a tramp. It does not mean that they are a liar or a manipulator. It does not mean that they won't have a stable relationship. It just means they fuck the same gender or an opposite gender, or they change the definition of their gender or whatever. But you're intertwining other issues with that issue. You are intertwining, the transgender issue with the polygamy issue and things like that. And that's where the problem comes in. And it's understandable because, well, people do it all the fucking time. So they don't know any better. But it isn't dialectical materialism. The dialectical observation of these issues would be something like, look at how the MRA acts towards women. But then they turn around and say that a lot of MRAs betray the movement once they're in a relationship. Well, what changed from then and now? What changed their perception of women? What changed women's perception of them? Etc. Material conditions. That's all. The difference between then and now for them was that the material conditions have changed, so they have changed. Their opinions have changed. Their ideology has changed. Because they are in a different position than they once were. And this is why a lot of communists are very hesitant to side with people that have a lot of money or have a lot of land and power, influence. It's not that they wouldn't be useful, but because of their material conditions, it will change their perception of reality. They will be more interested in maintaining that status quo because the status quo is good for them than changing it for everybody and in turn losing their privilege. So that's why most often you don't see rich people in communist movements, because they are rich and they're defined by being rich, whether or not they choose to be, because of their material conditions. And all the same, that's why MRAs are MRAs, because of their material conditions. They're not getting laid, they're not getting the respect they feel they deserve, or maybe even what they do deserve, and they take it out on women. Whether or not women are responsible for that is something else entirely. But given their material conditions, they are responding in kind. And that's why we also have the term reactionary, because they are reacting in a way that benefits the bourgeois class. If the way they're reacting is not in line with any sort of real change to the demographic, any sort of positive change, then it cannot be considered revolutionary. This does not mean that we think that they are bad people necessarily. It does not mean that we think that they need to be shot or imprisoned. It just means that they are shooting themselves in the foot, and that is wrong, and they need to come to terms with that. So, at some point in everybody's life, they are going to do something reactionary. They are going to either say it or do it actively, and that's just the way life is. That's just people. There's no getting around that. But there's a difference between doing it because of a knee-jerk reaction and actively seeking out these reactionary revolutions, quote unquote. Like libertarianism or any kind of right-wing philosophy is actively seeking the reactionary as a means of changing things back to the way they were. Let's bring up MRAs again. MRAs see that women are different than they were fucking 50 years ago. They want to say women are tramps and that women are horrible and that they're manipulative and lying scumbags. Okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt for this, conversation piece. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt for this example. If this is true, what would it solve going backward? What would it solve going back to an era where women don't get to have full-time work? The workplace discriminates against them. Because if the workplace can discriminate against women, it can discriminate against men, unless you set very specific laws, which they are not going to do. And it would be almost impossible to do anyway. You're not going to have a system in place that says a business can only discriminate against women. It's just, that's unrealistic. So, in order for them to go back to discriminating against women, they have to be able to discriminate against men too. This means there's going to be a lot of men without jobs as well. And it does not change the material conditions for most men, because as those men are going without jobs, they're still not going to get laid. They're still going to get treated like shit because they don't have a good job. No woman wants to be with, some janitor. And then those MRAs are going to distance themselves from the current MRAs, and then they're going to argue back and forth about who's really an MRA and who's really interested in men's rights, and these new guys don't know what they're talking about, and all this bullshit, because it is reactionary. It doesn't attack the center problem, and the center problem is capitalism. Capitalism forces them to have to do shitty work just to get ends meet, and nobody wants to be associated with such people, even though that's most of the fucking people. And it creates this culture that says that we should only treat people of stature kind, even though they most likely got that stature from being terrible fuckwads and things like that. And this in turn that's the dialectic. That is the problem. And whether or not Tumblr types say that in those words, they at least somewhat get it. And I say somewhat because they tend to dwell on very specific aspects of it. They deal with the symptoms. The symptoms of capitalism are transphobia, homophobia, fatphobia, every kind of phobia imaginable, arachnophobia. Because that is the way capitalism operates. That's how it sustains itself. By dividing people, by creating strawman enemies, by attacking very specific groups, whether to imperialize them or whether to just talk about it but not actually do anything about it. Look at ISIS. Oh, ISIS is so bad, ISIS is killing everybody. But they're not actually going out and killing ISIS members, because if they did that, they wouldn't have an excuse anymore. If they just bombed the entire Middle East, who would they have then to blame for all of America's problems? They'd have to invent a new enemy. So that's why they send in infantry, ground troops, which is fucking primitive as hell. They have the technology to just get rid of everybody. Not only would that be a human rights violation, but the fact is that they don't do that because of the fact that they need that proxy. They need that, made up enemy. If they were really that concerned, they wouldn't care about the bad PR. Even if everybody said that, America was this fascist empire that was just bombing everything, they do it anyway. So why not just go the extra mile? Because it's a bullshit. It's just a lie. And this fabrication goes on in everything. That's the dialectic. The fact is, you feel the way you do because of your material conditions, as do the people that you supposedly hate. They, too, are affected by material conditions. Different material conditions, different people. There is nothing outside of this. I'm not going to get into these metaphysical concepts of human nature or divine intervention, that people are somehow affected by these invisible forces, whether it be some pseudoscience of genetics or the more religious type that Satan is telling them to do these things. It is just simply what is physically there. We know physically that conditions what you have to do every day of your life and how you've experienced life will affect your character vehemently. And that is in essence dialectical materialism. And when Marx made dialectical materialism into a thing, his natural answer to that was political communism. communism was the most logical ends toward a better society for everybody, towards better productivity, toward a sustainable economy, because those are the three planks of an economy: efficiency, sustainability, and how many people it's good for, which you can call labor if you want. I don't know. The point is that a good economy, obviously, if it's unsustainable, it's not good. It's just a temporary fix. If it doesn't, benefit everybody, then it is not good. It is just bourgeois. And if it is not, innovative and actually actively making things better and creating better material conditions and actively seeking answers to life's problems, then what's the point? That's why these fucking hippie communes and anarchist bullshit don't work. So, Marx figured that communism fulfilled all three of those criteria for a dialectical world. And of course there's going to be people that be like, communism kill people, communism doesn't work in practice, shit like that. But who led them to believe that? What point in their life did they come to terms with that under their own experiences, or did they just figure that because somebody told them so? School told them, TV told them that, some dumbass on the internet told them that. They don't know, they never lived under communism, so they can't fucking say for sure. They can't even say they lived under a very, very socialist country. Fucking Sweden and Norway and shit like that, they claim to be liberal socialists. Hardly. If they were so socialist, they wouldn't let imperialist American companies go over there and get away with murder. So, it's just bullshit after bullshit. And then people wonder why everyone's so goddamn stupid. All you do is lie to each other constantly. And given the material conditions, you gotta expect people to be stupid and evil. Whether it be men or women. I guess I'm done.